3 weeks earlier, I was standing on the front porch of the house on West Richwoods Boulevard with a grocery bag cutting into my fingers. Milk, eggs, a rotisserie chicken still warm enough to fog the plastic. 14 years I'd lived in that house. 14 winters, 14 summers, 14 years of mowing the same lawn, fixing the same loose hinge, repainting the same porch rail every other year because Elaine liked it fresh. And now there was a sheriff standing just off my right shoulder. He was polite, middle-aged, the kind of man who smelled faintly of aftershave and cold air, the kind who cleared his throat when he didn't want to be there. Behind the storm door, I heard it. Click. A brand new deadbolt. Slow, deliberate. My stepson, Derek Holt, was twisting it with one hand while smiling at his phone, thumb flicking like this was just another task on his list. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes were calm, detached. "You don't live here anymore." The words didn't land all at once. They came in pieces, like hail hitting a windshield. Sharp, scattered, hard to process. "I just ran to the store," I said. My voice sounded thin to my own ears. "My jacket's inside. My pills. I just need—" Derek opened the door just wide enough to reach out. He took the grocery bag from my hand and dropped it. Thud. Milk sloshed, the bag tipped, one egg cracked clean through the carton, yellow spreading slowly across the concrete like a stain that wouldn't wash out. "Buy new ones," he said, already turning away. "Keys, now." I looked at the sheriff. He didn't meet my eyes, just shifted his weight. "Sir, I'm here to keep the peace." Peace. That word almost made me laugh. The porch still had the faded American flag Elaine insisted on hanging every Memorial Day. The screen door still creaked the same tired squeal I used to joke sounded like it needed oil and a prayer. Inside, I could see the corner of the living room, Elaine's brown recliner, the one where she sat every night, feet tucked under her, humming along to whatever old song happened to be on the radio. American Pie, usually. She never remembered all the words, but she hummed like it mattered. "Ray," Derek snapped, "don't make this harder than it has to be." Harder. My hand was shaking when I pulled the keys from my pocket. I hadn't noticed until the metal rattled against itself. 14 years of coming and going through that door, and now I was handing it over like I'd borrowed the place for a weekend. Derek took the keys without touching my hand. "Your stuff will be boxed," he said. "I'll call you." "My prescriptions," I tried again. "They're in the bathroom cabinet. I just need—" "Not my problem." The door shut. The new lock slid home with an ugly final clack. The sheriff waited a beat, then tipped his hat. "I'm sorry, sir." I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the doorframe. The faint pencil marks were still there. Elaine measuring Derek's height when he was a kid. 12, 13, 14. She laughed every time he shot up another inch. He'd forgotten those marks. I hadn't. I picked up the grocery bag. The bottom gave out completely this time. The chicken rolled onto the step, grease soaking into the concrete. I left it there. My Ford Taurus sat at the curb, a '99 model. Not pretty, but it started every morning if you treated it right. I opened the trunk and tossed in the one thing Derek allowed me to take, a duffel bag with a couple of changes of clothes and a shoebox I'd grabbed from the hall closet when he wasn't looking. The lid had my handwriting on it. Important papers, Ray only. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time before turning the key. The house looked smaller from the street. Or maybe I did. It started to rain as I pulled away. Not a storm, just a steady, cold drizzle that blurred everything around the edges. I drove without thinking, ended up in a grocery store parking lot a few miles away. Same chain, different location. fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I reclined the seat and stared at the ceiling fabric. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from Derek. I didn't listen. Elaine had been gone 3 weeks. Stroke, no warning. One day we were arguing about whether the furnace needed replacing before winter. The next, I was standing in a hospital hallway, holding her purse because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. 14 years. Now I was sleeping in my car, the heater barely working, rain tapping on the roof like someone trying to get my attention. I whispered it out loud because the silence felt too big. Was I really just a guest? I didn't know the answer yet, but the shoebox in my trunk felt heavier than it had any right to. 3 days later, Derek made sure I understood exactly how disposable he thought I was. The law office smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner, the kind that never quite masks what came before it. Henderson and Pike had been on the corner of Main Street longer than I'd lived in Peoria, a squat brick building with brass letters on the door and a waiting room that looked frozen in the late 80s. Brown carpet worn thin at the edges, a stack of magazines no one had touched in years. I showed up 10 minutes early. That's how Elaine and I did things. Early meant respectful. Early meant you cared. Derek showed up late. I heard him before I saw him, hard-soled shoes clicking down the hallway. His voice loud, casual, like he was walking into a bar, not a will reading. "Sorry, traffic," he said, grinning at no one in particular. He dropped into the chair across from me and stretched his legs out, ankle crossed over knee. I noticed the watch right away. Big face, shiny. The kind people buy to look successful, not because they need to know the time. "Nice place," he added, glancing around. "Bet this costs a fortune." I didn't answer. My hands were folded in my lap, knuckles white against the fabric of my old flannel shirt. I'd worn it without thinking. Elaine liked it on me, said it made me look steady. An elderly woman sat at a desk near the door, shuffling papers with careful hands. Soft gray hair in a bun, glasses hanging from a chain. When she looked up and met my eyes, she gave me the smallest nod. Not pity, recognition. "Mr. Holt," a man called from the doorway. Derek jumped up. "That's me." "And Mr. Collins?" a man added, glancing at a folder. I stood. My knees creaked loud in the quiet room. Derek smirked. He'd noticed. The conference room was tight. Rectangular table, 4 chairs, a clock ticking on the wall with the persistence of a dripping faucet. Someone had tried to brighten it up with a fake plant, but the leaves were dusty. The attorney, mid-50s, thinning hair, nameplate reading Robert Pike, cleared his throat. "I'll keep this brief," he said. "We're here to read the last will and testament of Elaine Marie Collins." Derek leaned back, hands folded behind his head. He looked bored. I kept my eyes on the table. There was a faint ring where someone had set a coffee mug years ago. I traced it with my thumb. Slow, steady. Elaine used to trace circles on the back of my hand when she was thinking. Elaine named her son, Derek Holt, as executor of the estate. The primary asset is the residence on West Richwoods Boulevard. Derek's smile widened. The residence is to pass in full to Derek Holt. There it was. Derek let out a low chuckle. "Told you." The attorney kept reading. Furniture, personal effects, a few small accounts. I heard almost none of it. My chest felt tight, like someone had cinched a strap around it. My vision blurred. "So, that's it, right?" The attorney hesitated. "There are additional documents attached to the estate file." "Paperwork," Derek waved him off. "Always paperwork." He turned to me then, really looked at me. His eyes were sharp, cold, different than they'd ever been when Elaine was alive. "Hope you enjoy being homeless," he said, "because I made sure you get nothing." The words hit harder than the lock ever did. Heat rushed up my neck. My ears burned. I reached for the paper cup of coffee in front of me.
My hand trembled. The liquid sloshed over the rim, splashing onto my shirt. "Damn!" Derek laughed. "Careful there, Ray." Coffee dripped onto the carpet, dark and ugly. "Mr. Holt?" the attorney said sharply. "It's fine. He knows how this works, right, Ray?" I couldn't answer. My mouth felt dry, thick. As Mr. Pike gathered his papers, something caught my eye. A pale envelope, folded once, blocky handwriting across the front. Property tax, 2016. My handwriting. I'd written that sitting at the kitchen table, Wheel of Fortune humming in the background, Elaine shouting answers at the TV, laughing when she got them wrong. My pulse picked up. "There's one more thing," the attorney said carefully. "We'll need to schedule a follow-up regarding—" "I've got a call with a realtor," Derek cut in, already standing. "Mail whatever else to my lawyer." He leaned down close enough that I could smell his cologne. Too much of it, sharp and sweet. "Don't take this personal," he murmured. "You were just my mom's husband." Then he walked out. The door clicked shut. Mr. Pike looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Collins? I'm sorry. I'd like copies," I said. My voice surprised me. It sounded steady. "Your copies," he nodded. "Of course." Outside, the air was cold and clean. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing it in, heart racing. Derek thought he'd finished me, but he'd never really looked at the fine print.
The sign in the window was hand-painted. Jensen Law, Probate in Real Estate. The building sat between a closed-down insurance office and a pawn shop that still advertised VCRs in the window. The door stuck when I pulled it open. I had to lean into it with my shoulder. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and black coffee. A woman in her early 60s looked up from a yellow legal pad. Short gray hair, sensible shoes, the kind of person who didn't rush because she didn't have to prove anything. "Can I help you?" she asked. I set the shoebox on her desk. "I think so," I said, "but I need you to read the fine print." She raised an eyebrow. Then she smiled, just a little. "All right," she said. "Let's see what you've got." Marla Jensen didn't skim. She read every page the way Elaine used to read recipes, slow, deliberate, finger-tracking each line like she was listening for something beneath the words. The office was quiet, except for the scratch of her pen and the distant sound of traffic on Main Street. Finally, she tapped the HELOC packet. "This isn't nothing," she said. I let out a breath. "But," she continued, holding up a finger, "it's not a hammer. Not yet." She explained it in plain language. The line of credit was still active. The lien was real. Any sale or refinance would drag it into the open. And my records, mortgage payments, property taxes, maintenance, gave me standing to file a creditor's claim through probate. "The trick," she said, "is patience." Patience I had. Silence, maybe not, but waiting I could do. The courthouse became my second home. Plastic chairs under flickering lights, copy fees that added up fast, forms in triplicate that made my hand cramp halfway through. Once, a cleric slid my paperwork back across the counter. "You're missing an exhibit." "Which one?" She shrugged. "You tell me." That night, back at the motel, I lay listening to the ice machine hum outside and wondered if Elaine would be disappointed in me for pushing this far. I dreamed she was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, watching me read a stack of documents. "You're doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" "Making sure we don't get burned." I woke up with my heart pounding. The note from her was still folded in my wallet. Meanwhile, Derek was busy. I heard about it everywhere. From Jim at the plant, from a guy at the VFW fish fry who didn't realize I was 2 tables away. Derek was ripping out the garden, replacing siding, talking about adding value, bragging about flipping the house fast. One Friday night, I drove past without thinking. Floodlights lit up the yard, a work truck idled at the curb. The fence I'd painted last summer lay in pieces on the lawn, boards stacked like bones. It hurt more than I expected. Marla told me not to make contact. She said let him spend.
Every improvement makes him more confident, and confidence makes people sloppy. So I stayed quiet. We filed the creditor's claim, attached the proof, waited for the notice to go out. Derek didn't respond at first. Then his attorney called Marla, loud, dismissive, called my claim desperate, baseless. Marla listened, thanked him, hung up. "Good," she said. "That means they're paying attention." The probate hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Derek would have to show up. No texts, no locks, no running. The night before, I sat in my car outside the motel, engine off, watching streetlights glow on wet pavement. I thought about the first winter Elaine and I spent in that house when the furnace failed and we slept in the living room with space heaters and extra blankets. We'd laughed through it, told ourselves it was temporary. This felt permanent. I went inside and slept. The Peoria County Courthouse was colder than it needed to be. Even in summer, the air conditioning hummed like it was trying to preserve something fragile. I arrived early. Old habit. Hands folded, knee bouncing just enough to annoy myself. Marla arrived 10 minutes later with a thin briefcase and a styrofoam cup of coffee. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Ask me again in an hour." She smiled. "Fair." Derek came in loud. Same shoes, same smirk. This time he had an attorney, tall, slick hair, practiced smile, and a younger woman trailing behind them whispering about listings and open houses. He spotted me. "Didn't think you'd actually show," he said. "I live here," I replied. He laughed. "Told you he thinks this ends differently." The bailiff called us in. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No drama, no stage, just a judge, a few rows of benches, and the quiet weight of decisions being made whether you like them or not. Derek's attorney went first, spoke fast, confident, painted me as a bitter afterthought, a guest, a man grasping at paperwork because he couldn't accept he wasn't family. The word guest still stung. Then Marla stood. She didn't pace, didn't raise her voice. She laid documents on the podium one by one. Mortgage payments, property taxes, maintenance receipts. Years of them. The judge leaned forward. Derek stopped smiling. "And finally," Marla said, "there is an active home equity line of credit attached to the property." Derek's attorney frowned. "That was never disclosed." "It wasn't closed," Marla replied calmly, "and Mr. Collins is the sole guarantor." The judge looked at Derek. "Is that correct?" Derek opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his attorney. That can't be right." "It is," Marla said, "because she trusted him." The room went very quiet. The judge asked for financial disclosures. Derek's attorney smirked, asked for mine too. Marla handed over a single sheet. The judge read slowly. My pension, my savings, the duplex I'd bought years before Elaine and never sold. Not rich, but not broke. Not disposable. And when you factor in lien priority, Mr. Collins' net position exceeds the remaining equity of the estate. Derek shot to his feet. "That's impossible. He's got nothing. I made sure of it." The judge looked over his glasses. "Sit down, Mr. Holt." Derek didn't. His face had gone pale, sweat beaded at his temples. He took one step back, hit the bench, reached out like the room was moving. Then his knees buckled. He hit the tile hard. Gasps. Someone shouted. The bailiff rushed forward. I stayed seated, hands trembling, breathing slow. Elaine's note pressed warm against my chest. When they carried Derek out on a stretcher, the revenge was already complete. What came next wasn't punishment. It was choice.
They didn't rush me when Derek went down. That's the strange thing about moments like that. You expect chaos, shouting, people moving all at once, but the courtroom fell into a kind of stunned hush. Shoes scuffed, a chair scraped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." The bailiff was already kneeling beside Derek, talking to him in a calm, practiced voice.
The realtor, the young woman who'd been whispering about open houses, had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide, phone forgotten in her other hand. I stayed seated. My hands were shaking, so I folded them together and pressed them against my knee. Breathe in, breathe out. Elaine's note was in my wallet, right over my heart. I could feel the edge of the folded paper through the fabric of my shirt, like a reminder. You're not imagining this. You didn't make this up. The judge called for a recess. Paramedics arrived fast, too fast almost, like this kind of thing happened more often than people wanted to admit. They checked Derek's vitals, spoke to him quietly, lifted him onto a stretcher. As they wheeled him out, his eyes flicked toward me. Just for a second. There was no anger in them anymore, no smugness, just confusion, like the world had tilted and he couldn't understand why. I didn't nod. I didn't smirk. I didn't say a word. I just watched him go. When the courtroom cleared, Marla sat down beside me. "You did fine," she said. I swallowed. My throat felt tight. I didn't want him to collapse. She gave a small shrug. Truth has a way of hitting people all at once. The judge reconvened the hearing after the paramedics left. No drama this time, just process. Deadlines, options, numbers. Derek's attorney spoke differently now, softer, careful, like a man who realized too late that he'd misjudged the room and the person standing quietly on the other side of it. I could have pushed harder. Marla told me that later, plainly. I had the leverage to force a sale, to take back more than I ever imagined standing in that grocery store parking lot weeks earlier, with rain tapping on my windshield. But sitting there, listening to paper shuffle and pens scratch, all I could see was Elaine. Not sick, not tired, but the way she looked on quiet Sunday mornings, barefoot in the kitchen, coffee in one hand, humming without realizing it. So I chose fair. Derek kept the house, on paper anyway, on the condition that my creditor's claim was paid in full, the lien resolved properly. No shortcuts, no favors, clean paper, clean break. The judge approved it, just like that. No speech, no gavel slam, just a signature and a quiet, final nod. The check cleared 2 weeks later. I didn't celebrate. I bought a used recliner from a place on Knoxville Avenue, the kind with worn arms and solid bones, the kind you could sit in for years. I bought a small dining table that fit just right by the window, and I moved into a one-story bungalow near the Illinois River, close enough to hear the water at night if the windows were open. I planted tomatoes in the backyard the way Elaine used to, too close together on purpose. They like the company, she always said. On my first evening there, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and listened to the cicadas start up. No locks clicking behind me, no footsteps coming to push me out. Just quiet. A week later, I mailed Derek an envelope. No money inside, no note about court, no lecture, just a photograph. Elaine at the county fair. Laughing, hair blown sideways by the wind, one hand shielding her eyes from the sun. The woman he forgot in the rush to claim what he thought was owed to him. I don't know if he kept it. I don't know if it mattered. What mattered was this. I hadn't been erased. I learned something through all of it, something I wish I'd understood sooner. Kindness doesn't mean weakness, and patience doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes it just means waiting long enough for the truth to have room to stand up. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt pushed aside after doing everything right, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Check your own paperwork. Know your worth. And if you want more stories like this, quiet victories earned the hard way, subscribe and stay with us, because sometimes justice doesn't shout. Sometimes it waits.